Welcome back to the Bleav in Tigers podcast. We are here coming to you after the trade deadline, and there was some speculation, in months prior to the deadline. What are we going to do? We found out what we are going to do. We sold. We frankly, that's what we did. The Tigers made 4 trades at the trade deadline. Obviously, Carson Kelly to the Rangers, Andrew Chafin also to the Rangers, Jack Flaherty to the Dodgers, and Mark Cahna to the Giants. No East Coast teams. Everybody's headed out west, where it seems like teams are more competitive. Whether or not that may be true, the West divisions are certainly strong this year, as are the Centrals. But the Tigers made some moves, and we're going to go in and talk about each move and talk about the return and what I thought we should have gotten for each player. As you can see, it's scrolling on the ticker. I kind of want to talk about Carson Kelly first. He was the first player that was traded. He was traded just before the deadline. It seemed it was a no-brainer decision. Tigers fans, Tigers people in the administration, coaches, we all knew Carson Kelly wasn't going to be there because you had a logjam, and I think you're starting to have a logjam in the outfield as well as you have had catcher, but I think that's a conversation for another day. Dillon Dingler has more than deserved his spot in the MLB, and he just hasn't had that. So the Tigers decided to trade Carson Kelly. They actually got 2 players back, which I was kind of shocked about. But they got a catcher prospect and a right-handed pitcher, Tyler Owens. I didn't think the return was going to be huge. I think the return really for the Tigers is Dillon Dingler, which sounds crazy, but you trade away Carson Kelly, you get Dillon Dingler, AAA prospect now headed to the MLB. And that was the plan all along. Like if Carson Kelly was traded, they weren't going to go out and get a catcher. Like that was just never a part of the plan. But Liam Hicks, Tyler Owens, again, I don't think this is a humongous return. I think both guys could make an impact. I will say that. I don't hate this trade as and other people hated this trade. Rental catcher. You get Liam Hicks, who provides depth. We'll talk about. There are some interesting catching players that the Tigers got at the deadline, and we'll get into that later. Tyler Owens is another guy. I'm not too sure about MLB impact for Tyler Owens. He's been pretty solid in the MILB, in AA right now, assigned to the Erie Seawolves. But he has a 2.8 ERA, 1.19 WHIP. Is not really a starter. Tried to be a starter for some of his career, got moved to the bullpen. I don't know if he has major league stuff. Obviously, the numbers are cool. You like seeing a guy with a low 1 WHIP and under 3 ERA. Like, that's cool, but I just don't think he'll make an impact. Liam Hicks is a guy, admittedly, I'm unsure about. He was signed 2021 draft, round 9 guy. Has been league average in MILB. I think that's fair to say. Not counting his Erie stats, as he's only played 1 game or 2 games. 260 batting average, 364 on base, 353 slug. That on base number is nice though, and I think that is a tool he can use. Around a 700 OPS is probably better as a catcher than some of the other catching prospects that the Tigers received. But I wouldn't say he's a humongous difference maker, but I think that's a solid trade. I think you give yourself two guys who could make a major league impact. I kind of see Tyler Owen fitting in that Mason Englert role, 2023 Mason Englert role, not 2024. I don't know where I see Liam Hicks in the future. I think at his peak, he is a backup catcher. Uh, Obviously, Jake Rogers is going to stick around for a little while, but then you have Dillon Dingler. Again, just not a ton of room at the catcher position. Again, why I think there's a logjam. But it was a very talentless part of the organization for a long time. So the fact that they made trades for catching prospects makes sense. And Andrew Chafin was also dealt, not for a pitching prospect, but for two pitching prospects. And I think this is by far the best trade that the Tigers had at the deadline. Montalvo, who is probably the biggest piece. I mean, you can say both. I just don't know if Chase Lee has the velocity to make it at the MLB level. Like, has an interesting arm slot, but his low 90s could find a way at the MLB level, but I just don't see it right now. At least, I just think the velocity needs to be there. I think he's a unique pitcher. I don't know. I don't see him as a high leverage guy at any point, just because of the velocity. And I am a pure velocity guy. I'm a K per nine over ERA type of guy, but I don't know. I can't get on the Chase Lee train, but the train I can get on is Joseph Montalvo, who the Tigers got for Andrew Chafin. I thought this was a crazy return. He was 27th in Texas Pipeline, made 13 starts, had a 2.44 ERA, and this trade kind of seemed like a lob, like it's a rental pitcher. I mean, you're going to get guys. Didn't really seem like you could mess it up. They did the absolute opposite of that. I mean, there was a lob, and it was a slam dunk. Montalvo is a guy who could make an impact this year. Or I'm sorry. He's in high A right now. Montalvo is a guy who can make an impact soon, right? And Chase Lee, I mixed them up. Chase Lee is a guy who could make an impact this year. The thing is, I don't see him being super successful at the MLB level, but I think he's MLB ready, if that makes sense. I think he's as good as he's going to be. Has a 1.93 ERA in AAA this year over almost 11 innings. Will be interesting to see what they do there. But that was by far the best trade. And then the Tigers made a trade that was a lot more polarizing than that one. We knew Jack Flaherty was gone. Jack Flaherty and Carson Kelly, it almost seemed like they were definites to leave. Andrew Chafin and Mark Cahna, who also got traded, were kind of in that conversation, but it was Flaherty and Kelly gone first. You're okay if you still have Cahna and Chafin. That was the mentality I went in with. I don't know how to feel about the Jack Flaherty trade. I called in, to the wonderful team over at Locked On Tigers. Scott Bentley was doing a Twitter space, and I kind of talked about this trade, but I didn't really go into depth. It's because I don't know. Tyrone Lorenzo is the big piece in the trade. He's a catching prospect, a ton of pop, has a good eye, has chase problems, and the contact numbers aren't really there. I don't see. The thing is, he as a prospect grades out cool. High power tool out of a catcher is a switch hitting bat. That's cool, right? And there's not a lot of guys like that, but I don't see, again, where he fits in, and maybe he's just a piece in a later trade, but why would you trade your all-star level pitcher for him and a shortstop who you also don't know is going to make an impact. I really, if they made a trade with the Dodgers, like I thought they were going to get somebody that can make a bigger impact. He wasn't a top 5 prospect. He is now. Lorenzo is now the number 5 prospect in the Tigers system. It's just, there's so much risk in trading for a guy like Lorenzo. It seems like this was an underpay. We saw the Yosei Kikuchi trade. We saw how much he got, and there were 3 prospects in that trade. There's not a prospect ranked as high as a player in the Yosei Kikuchi trade. They also got 3 players, I think all of which were top 30. It's just, the question starts to arise. And I will say, Lorenzo has climbed up prospect ratings throughout the season, because those are not updated, as the wonderful Jeff Passan tweeted earlier this week. Those are not updated throughout the season necessarily. But on Fangraphs, who does update their prospect ratings throughout the season, they had Lorenzo as a top 5 or top 3 player in the system. But I just don't necessarily see the vision, because Scott Harris talked about he didn't want to trade for another player that's going to grade out as a DH. Where do you think Lorenzo plays? Right? Because he's a catcher, first baseman second. He doesn't really have the glove at catcher to stay there. You don't really necessarily want to play him first. He's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. But because he's played catcher so much, he doesn't also necessarily have the glove at first base to be a guy that grades out well in the field. Therefore, he's kind of one of the main guys that could be on the stretch to be at the DH position. When Lorenzo plays in the major leagues, right, you're still going to have Kerry Carpenter. You're still going to have Riley Green and Justin Henry Malloy. Justin Henry Malloy and Kerry Carpenter are also guys who are fighting for the DH spot, and you don't know when Torkelson is going to come back. If he's in the winning era of this program, when you have all of your guys up and you have Clark and you have McGonigal and you have Young, I don't know what we do with the DH position, because it seems like Scott Harris has tried to build an identity as like, oh, I want players that can field, but then completely neglects that and has a roster full of guys whose field tool is lower than anything else. And it just seems like the DH position is at a logjam. So is the outfield and the catcher position. Like, I don't see a situation really where he plays as a platoon guy or plays over Dingler. The pop is cool, but I think Dingler overall is more enticing as a prospect currently. So I don't know what you do with Lorenzo. This trade to me was just so interesting. There was another guy in the trade, that's Trey Sweeney, shortstop, who is farther along in his process. Probably won't see the MLB quite soon, but he is in Toledo right now. Had a 761 OPS in the season, a 254 average. He has not played yet in Toledo. He's another guy. Again, where does he fit in? He was a round 1 pick. Sure. Is he just a guy you plug in at shortstop because you're going to DFA McKinstry or you're going to get rid of Baez? Maybe. I'm still not on the get rid of Baez train. I still believe in Baez. But you need more options at shortstop, frankly, if you want to win. And I think they're just going to send out whoever they got this year, see what they have, see what they don't have. I imagine Torkelson is back at some point during this year. Meadows obviously back from injury. It's just, you don't know where anything is going to come from. Any production is going to come from, that is. Trey Sweeney could be an MLB guy. There's just so many questions. And the Jack Flaherty trade, I think, just adds more. I don't think it's an answer to any of the questions. I don't think it's oh, this guy can take over at shortstop. I don't know if you're too positive about that with Trey Sweeney. I do like the prospect though. It's just I do like the player though. It just seems like we kind of threw something out there and got bits of nothing and something back. I just don't know what we're going to see out of Trey Sweeney. I'm in no rush to see him in the major leagues. When he is in the major leagues, I have no clue what his role is going to be. And I don't know. It just seemed like a trade that was forced because Scott Harris tried to play his hand, seeing the Yosei Kikuchi trade and try to get a better package, and then teams shipped out on him, and he didn't know what to do. And yeah, it just kind of seemed like the same story as last deadline. Wait for everything to happen until the last second. And another trade that happened the last second was the Mark Canada to the Giants trade. That was straight up Eric Silva, who's a right-handed pitcher. 41 and a third innings this season, 4.35 ERA. It just doesn't. That's another trade that I just don't see making an impact. I don't think we'll ever see Eric Silva in the major leagues. He got sent straight to Erie and has not played yet, but he's just another guy. He kind of has MLB stuff, but not really. And admittedly, I just don't know how to feel about this deadline. I was fine with trading away Chafin, Kelly, and Flaherty. Those made sense. I kind of wanted Cahna to stay on the roster just to keep the continuity of the roster that way. I don't really like seeing Madras at first base. I like Cahna there more. I'm intrigued by Ibanez at first. I'm intrigued by Vierling at first. I'm not in love with it as an idea. I like Vierling more in the outfield than I do at third anyway. Ibanez, I think, is a great defender. I think you could put him anywhere. McKinstry has been on and off. Has a more solid field tool than he does anything in the batter's box. But the continuity of the roster going forward, you just don't know what you have. At first base, you don't have a guy that you can rely on to play there every day. Madras might not stay in the major leagues. He might. You never know. Ibanez they play Kansas City tonight. Ibanez is going to be at first. You have Keith at second, which is one of the players that seems like the only sure thing. You don't have Riley Green. You don't have Kerry Carpenter. You have two starters in your rotation in Kaider Montero and Tariq Skubal. Everybody else is injured or is brand new. I don't know what the Tigers are going to do going forward with anything. With the pitching rotation, with the lineup, the shortstop position. Baez has been in and out of the lineup. He's hitting ninth. He gets hot. He gets cold. Again, there's so much uncertainty. The outfield, there's no pure fielding guys. You'll get that back when Meadows is there. But what do you want the outfield to look like? Is it Bleav in left field? Is it Perez in right? Like, there's just so many questions, right? I think guys who are everyday starters in the outfield right now that is healthy or that will be healthy soon, I'm not including Riley Green because we don't know when he's coming back. I think you have Parker Meadows and you have Matt Vierling. Matt Vierling, who you can put in center, but I would rather have Meadows in center. But who fills that other spot? I don't think Bleav has been elite. I don't think Perez has been elite in the field. I do like his versatility, though. I do like that he can play infield, did play infield at one point, and has been able to show his competence in the field. But other than that, who you have? You have Madris, who's been playing more at first base because you don't want him in the outfield at a major league level. You have other guys who I guess could play the outfield. Zach McKinstry played left field last night. I don't like him in the outfield. I think it's the reason he's in the outfield is so his defense in the infield can get better. You don't know what you have right now if you're the Tigers. Sean Gunther, Brennan Hanifee, and Brian Sammons all got called up in the rotation. It's just there's so much uncertainty. I feel like you're going to have to start Maeda down the stretch. I don't know who you can rely on out of the guys who just came up from AAA. I don't know how many of them are going to get pure starting time. Sean Gunther is interestingly, 6 inches short than Brian Sammons. Just thought I would mention that. And he made an appearance, went 1 1/3, gave up a run. That was a 6.75 ERA in the season. Brennan Hanifee also got blown up in his first start. 0.2 innings pitched, 27 ERA, 4.5 WHIP, and he played a small amount last year. Wasn't incredible. The person who I would say I guess I'm excited about is Brian Sammons, who got 7 innings, gave up a lot of runs, admittedly, was okay. The question for me is, can you rely on any of these guys consistently? Right? And I think the answer is no. Sammons, he was the main guy for his game. You had Brisky as the opener, so Sammons didn't get the start, but it was really a start. And then you had Vest come in out of the bullpen. That game just wasn't even fun to watch. I'll be completely honest. The Tigers didn't even score into the bottom of the 7th. They were down 8-0. Sammons dug himself into a hole. I think he has strikeout stuff. I think he's interesting. I will say I like him better than some of the other experiments this season, which have, frankly, gone wrong. I think he's better than Easton Lucas. I think he is better than Joey Wentz. I think he has more strikeout stuff than Kenta Maeda. Is he a long-term rotation guy? Is he third in the rotation? Because for right now, your rotation is Kenta Maeda, I guess. But I'll say it like this. You have Skubal, you have Montero, you have Sammons, Maeda / bullpen day, and then your 5th starter is a bullpen day. You just don't have starters on the roster right now. And Matt Manning is injured. Casey Mize is injured. Reese Olson is injured. What are the Tigers going to do with starting pitcher? I'm in favor of signing Noah Syndergaard. I think that's kind of silly. I think Feder could give Syndergaard a ride to have a solid ERA by the end of the season. But just seems like there's no continuity on this Tigers roster, and I don't know where we're going from here. Got a game tonight, 6:40. We'll have coverage for you tomorrow. Again, if you are listening, watching on YouTube, listening on podcast, subscribe, follow, give us a review, 1 star, 5 star, it doesn't matter. We want to know how you feel. This has been the latest episode of Bleav in Tigers. Hard to believe right now, but it's coming, I promise. Tigers, RJ Schafer, Bleav, signing out.